So we're going to start with a question from a guy named Zachariah Tiemens, who says, "What is the best case you can make against the internet as it now stands?" It's a great question. Um, uh, I would say there's two things. The case against the internet in general, I think that you could make is that the internet is proof that human nature is conservative and not liberal, only because we tend to think that human nature is inherently flawed. As I think I said not too long ago, the fact that you can not only have all the information ever known to human beings at your fingertips, and also be able to get basically a free education, including a free technical education. And the fact that all people use it for is gaming, Facebook, and porn is telling me that there's something about that goes to the liberal issue of, if we just gave people more money and free health care, then they'd all be able to get college educations, and they'd sit around and they'd paint and they'd do art and they'd get engineering degrees and all that. No, they'd sit around and they'd watch Oprah, and that's how life works, and that's how it is. And I'm that way too. I'm not trying to make the case that I'm any different than that. I I keep thinking, oh, great, I got Christmas break here, so that's 14 days or something, or 16 days, and I'm going to get 3 screenplays done, and I'm going to get all this other stuff actually done and accomplished and taken care of. And the next thing I know, it's like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm sitting on my couch, and it's like, yeah, I'll get started on that. Oh, hey, look, it's a WKRP in Cincinnati marathon. I think I'll spend the next 3 days watching that. So the case against the internet is on a sort of a superficial, not superficial, sort of a upper level case against it is, it does show that human nature does tend to take the easy road out. I can remember libraries and things like that, and certainly for me, it's a life-changing experience. The internet. Guys like me live on the internet. Not only do I come to you on the internet, but everything that comes to me comes through the internet. So there's that. But I think on much more easy to digest level, I think the internet is really, really messing with how we think. I really think it's changing the way humans think. I don't, because I'm kind of a conservative, I believe that the hardware it's changeable, but it's changeable over literally over millions of years. The hardware doesn't change over millennia. The hardware doesn't change over tens of thousands of years. The hardware changes over hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. So the hardware is the same. There's no fundamental difference between me and a Greek, helot, and there's no fundamental difference really between me and a Bronze Age guy from Great Britain in 40,000 BC. We're pretty much got the same hardware. The education is different. The language and all these other things are different. The amount of mental stimulation you get is different. So the software is different. And people have, it's widely been discussed that up until the 20th century, the speed of the horse was the top speed of mankind. And it's been the top speed of mankind for hundreds of thousands of years, or however long horses have been domesticated. Certainly for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. The speed of a running horse was as fast as humans could go. Prior to that, it was as fast as your legs could take you. And then along comes the 20th century, into the 19th century, I guess. And you start doing, all of a sudden, now you're doing, 30 miles an hour consistently, then 40, then 100, then 150, then 200, then 300, then 500, then, now we all do 500 miles an hour. It's not one of us who's really watching this show has never been in an airplane. I would imagine that traveling a jet from coast to coast, you're moving at 560 miles an hour over the ground. And up to 3,000 miles an hour for airplane, and guys who've gone to the moon are doing 24,000 miles an hour. So human speed has increased because of this, and so I think also has the time frame that humans think in. Prior to the invention of the industrial era, when everybody was living on farms, you really, you came in at sunset and you met people in the evening and all. What time you'll be by? I'll be by in the afternoon. Then all of a sudden, you have the industrial era and you have clocks, and I'll see you at 4 o'clock. And now we have with the internet and our lives are getting so dense and so scheduled, it's like I've got to call at 4:12 and pick something up at 4:25 and that sort of thing. But even that's not where I'm going with this. What I'm really trying to say is the internet is so vast. It's endless. It's bottomless. So there is nothing but choices. And I'm guilty of this myself, but I watch millennials do this, and they're much worse at it than I am. When you go to YouTube or something, you no longer have an attention span of a half an hour, even as if you're watching a half-hour TV show. Most people who are browsing the internet or looking at YouTube have an attention span in a minute or two. And frankly, the problem with the internet is there are so many choices, nobody finishes anything. And why would you? You don't, if you're watching an internet show and it's a sketch, it's kind of funny, it's not like you've got 2 other channels or 3 other channels or even 15. It's endless. You'll never get to the end of the internet. And so I think with all of these choices, people just spend more and more time browsing, more and more time grazing, and less time thinking, and less time even watching things. So you're not even getting the beginning and ending of stories anymore. Even little stories don't begin and end anymore. One of the popularities of these vines, these 6 or 8 second videos, is it's an 8-second video, or 6-second. I guess it's a 6-second video for a vine. And so you got to tell a story in 6 seconds. And sure enough, you can, but it's not a terribly deep story, and you don't learn an awful lot about life. So I think the problem with the internet is it's making us nuts, and it's destroying our attention span, and it's certainly destroying our willingness to dig into difficult material. It's just too easy to bounce off of it. Some of these books to give me the basis for what I, eventually try to work into the work that I do. Some of the stuff's not easy. Some of it is easy. Churchill biography is in 3 pieces, and each volume is 3,000 pages. There's 3 volumes in the Civil War trilogy. They're each about 2,000 or 3,000 pages. That's a fun read. I enjoyed. That's just pleasure for me. But things like RK are very difficult. They require you got to just kind of plow through it. And I think if that had happened to me, if I'd been born, in 1985 instead of 1959, I don't know if I'd have the patience to go through it. I really don't. So I think that's what I would say is the internet has provided so many choices of so many different kinds of materials that no one is willing to tolerate a slow spot, a hard spot, a difficult spot. They just bounce off, something else going on. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing so much autism. I think the pace of information processing is really catching up to us. I don't think anybody just sits out and thinks anymore. I don't think anybody just sits there and thinks. I don't think they talk much anymore either. Because I've texted people, and I'm not super fast on the text, but I can text people. And texting is not conversing. I used to, when you're at that age where you're having your friends and you're doing sleepovers and stuff, and, we used to go around and walk around the neighborhood at midnight and come back at 2:30, 3 in the morning. We just sit out and talk for 3.5, 4 hours in our cars or whatever, and just get deep and learn about things. I don't see any of that going on today, and I think it's a real problem. I think the other problem too, not directly attributable to the internet, but to the pace of our modern society, comes down to play. It used to be you could just go out and play. In fact, you're expected to go out and play, be home by dark. Now, you can't really have a friend at school and just like, well, hey, you want to just come out and hang out after school? No. Now you have to have play dates. Now you have to have mom, gets in touch with that. Well, what's Johnny's mom's name? Get her number. Hi, Jody. Yeah, this is Louisa. This is Jordan's mom. How's Thursday from 6:30 to 7? How does it? Is it 6:30 to? Can we do 6:30 to 8? It's like these kids are so overscheduled. They've got their piano lessons, they've got their hockey lessons, they've got their soccer lessons, they've got their this. They're taking their judo, and it's like everything's structured. Everything is ordered and structured. Nothing's spontaneous, and nothing's there's no real intellectual freedom and no imagination. When I was a kid, this is a pen. We would make like, okay, here's a pen. We used to use a ruler, but here's a business card, and you're just like, oh look, now I have a fighter airplane, and it's got a detachable nose section here for reentry, so that as we begin to approach the Earth's atmosphere, this is the fuel core that is ejected on reentry, and then the capsule. You see, the capsule comes in at a very steep angle. The parachute deploys. That is the result of having pretty crappy tools to work with compared to some of the graphics we see today. But it means that the graphics are up here, and it means that all this invention stuff happens up here. And it's, that's what got us all of this stuff, is this ability to go out and think about things and imagine things. That's not to say that these people working on video games today don't have imaginations. There's tremendous imaginations in some of this. But what they're really doing is the people who are imagining, just for the sake of an example, the people who are imagining like a really great level on a first-person shooter are intentionally depriving the people who are spending hours and hours and hours and hours playing those games of the imagination of having to come up with one of those in their head. And that's not usually a good thing. And the last thing I'll say about this train of thought is it is occasionally a good thing, because if you read like Lord of the Rings, for example, I have a pretty good imagination. I can imagine a lot of what I read in the book and imagine it. So I hadn't read the Lord of the Rings trilogy before I saw the movies. I saw the first movie and really put the hook in me, and then I read the books. But I hadn't seen them prior. I hadn't read the books prior. But I had read The Hobbit, and I had read The Hobbit a couple times before the Hobbit movies started to come out. And so I had an imagination view in my head of The Hobbit, of the world of The Hobbit. I had an idea of what inside Erebor looked like. I had an idea of what Smaug looked like. I had an idea of all this other stuff. And my imagination was no match for the 40 or 50 or 200 or whatever professional imaginations that are working on that movie. They would show me things that I just never was like, holy God, it's awesome. So I don't mean to make it all a bad thing, but I think I'm balanced. The mental pace is picking up. The concentration span is going down. The depth of communication is going down. People are communicating much more often on a much shallower level than we used to. And no one seems to sit out and go fishing or sit on a rock or a dock or a log or whatever and just think about things. Nobody seems to be reflecting much anymore. And I would say a lot of that's due to this damned internet. You could all be reflecting right now. You could be sitting around thinking about deep thoughts. Instead, you're listening to me. What a sad indictment against the state of human consciousness. Boy, I'll tell you what.